Okay, now we come to the big question, the big how. How, Paul, how does the gospel save believers? Well, because in it, the righteousness of God is revealed. Revealed. Revelation. In the gospel, there is revealed the righteousness of God from faith for faith. As it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. So this righteousness of God is something at first, before we see anything else, this righteousness of God, this is God's righteousness, which is absolutely perfect. Totally unique and holy. This is God's righteousness. But it's revealed in this way from faith for faith. As it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. Now, here we come to one of those things in Greek where we talked about Greek has no punctuation. And it's helpful that we can go back to the Hebrew, which also doesn't have punctuation, because this is a quote from Hosea. The righteous shall live by faith, or the just shall live by faith. Same word, justification, righteous, justified, righteous. Righteous is the noun form of justified. Same word, and that's going to be super important as well. But we'll get back to that. But look at how where we put the comma, it kind of changes the way this sounds. The righteous, comma, shall live by faith. Or, the righteous shall live by faith. Or, we could write this another way in a sense, the righteous by faith shall live. All of those are actually allowed based on the Greek grammar, from what I understand, from what people have told me, because I don't speak Greek, but I'm just trusting them. Other people who speak Greek say, well, you do this, and that makes sense, because when we look at some other translations, look at how they translate it. And here's the ordering. Young's Literal tries to get the ordering as close as they can to the words. For the righteousness of God, and it was revealed from faith to faith, according as it hath been written, and the righteous one by faith shall live. Now here, for sure, if you put the comma here, it's righteous by faith shall live. Righteous one by faith shall live. Or do we put the comma here? The righteous one by faith shall live. So what I'm asking here really is, what is faith modifying? Is faith modifying the living? Is it we're living by faith, we're living out a life by faith, which, by the way, is true? Or is this faith modifying righteous? In that, if we're righteous by faith, then we shall live, in the terms of live and not die, and not perish. And in the RSV, they go far enough to actually say it that way outright, which they're kind of the minority here. But let's read it. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed through faith, for faith. They're kind of messing with the words here. We have ESV saying from faith for faith. We have the YLT saying from faith to faith, which is probably the most literal, because that's Young's Literal translation. And the RSV is saying through faith for faith, as it is written, he who through faith is righteous shall live. Which is kind of the last one here. The righteous shall live by their faith. Now, both are right. Both are true. So oftentimes this is something to notice here, that when the Greek is ambiguous, or the Hebrew is ambiguous, or in this case both are ambiguous in terms of what's modifying what, here's something I found that's just awesome about the scriptures and how God's brought it to us, is that usually they're both true. So reading it one way or the other, you're not going to mess up your whole doctrine usually. Sometimes you will. So you have to be careful. Okay, is one of these not true? Well, then, okay, reject that one and go with the one that we know is true. In which case, the translators will usually do that for us. But in this case, they go back and forth. Which one is which? And I'm not going to. I'm not the definitive New Testament scholar, but I'm going to go with which one I think it is based on what this is saying, where it comes in the argument, in the context, and also some other places in Romans. And let's look at those first to help us maybe see why I think which one it is, and I'll tell you which one I think at the end. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. So there's a righteousness apart from the law. And then let's go to Galatians to kind of get a parallel idea, also by Paul. And Galatians is really close to Romans in its outline and kind of its structure and stuff. So Galatians and Romans are really helpful going back and forth, because if you read Galatians, it's kind of like a miniature Romans. It deals with a lot of the similar stuff, relationship between Judaism and Christianity and those kinds of things. A lot of things that Romans deals with, and in some of the same structure as well. But let's just read this here in Galatians. Now it is evident that no one is justified before God by the law, for, now he quotes the same thing from Galatians, which these are ESV, by the way. I'm ESV by default. If there's nothing there, then it's ESV. So these two are ESV. So I'm sure if we pulled out the RSV, we'd get again this: he who through faith is righteous shall live, because the righteous shall live by faith, or the righteous shall live by faith. So this is why I think Paul is saying this one. He's saying, he who through faith is righteous shall live. And a couple reasons. He who by faith is righteous shall live. That sounds a lot like a future salvation, which is what we were just seeing Romans 15 and 16 are really pointing to, as a future for salvation. Gospel revealing righteousness for a future salvation. We're going to live. Why? Because of the gospel, because it's revealing this righteousness from faith to faith. The other thing is that why would Paul be going with this whole from faith for faith, which I think is we start in faith, that's the beginning, and the gospel brings more faith. When we read the gospel in faith, when we hear the gospel in faith, when we see the gospel in faith, it brings about more faith, which causes us to live future-wise. Even if that's in this life, living, I really think that that's referring to a future life living and not perishing by faith, because it's in this argument of no one is justified before God by the law, apart from the law. So it's faith here is contrasted to the law here. And righteous by the law, no, it's righteous by faith. So it's the righteousness by faith shall live. So usually I'm an ESV lover. This case, I'm actually going to go with the RSV. He who through faith is righteous shall live. Shall, future, shall live. Okay, deep breath. Love this verse. It's just awesome. And neither way is wrong, but I really think it's this future shall live, just because that's the way this whole passage is reading, because this is preaching to believers, and we want you to live future and not perish, die. We want you to be righteous by faith and not by the law. This is a righteousness apart from the law, and it's through faith, for faith, a future faith. And now this slide's really messy, so let's go to the next one. Some discussion questions. So I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome, for I am not ashamed of the gospel. For it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. So some questions we're going to ask and talk about. Is the gospel the power to save believers because it keeps getting them saved again and again when they walk away. So I'm saved and then I'm not saved, and then I'm saved again and I'm not saved again. I'm not. Or is that something else? Or I don't know. So how is this good news the power to save? What are some examples? How does the gospel work it out? How does this faith and righteousness bring us to that future faith? And let's be real. Let's ask the question, do I know the gospel? Like, do I know it? Is it part of me? Do I even know it? Not even do I believe it, do I know it? And is this different than what I kind of thought the path to salvation would look like? Gospel, righteousness, faith to faith, future salvation. So it's just an examine our hearts question here. And finally, why is there nothing about love here? And I got this when listening to John Piper's sermon on this passage when he was talking about this. He says, look at what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, for in it, the gospel, the love of God is revealed from faith to faith. No, it says the righteousness of God is revealed. So why not love? Why righteousness? What is this righteousness about? If you want a hint of how we're going to discuss that, well, then read the next verse. But why not love? Why righteousness first in it? Why is it the righteousness that's revealed in the gospel? Isn't the gospel about God's love? I think it is. I mean, there's lots about love in the gospel. I mean, we know that God loves us because Christ died for us. So, but that's some questions that we're going to ask about these verses moving forward, and some questions to kind of mull over a little bit and bring some other questions for discussions about this.